Hello indie game fans, it was an insane month of releases in September with some potential Game of the Year candidates, so let's begin with God of Weapons, an action roguelike title with inventory management in which you are strategically slotting weapons and accessories into your backpack, which then automatically fires off attacks on enemies. Of course, this does have some Vampire Survivors inspiration due to the swarms of enemies surrounding you on all sides, but the inventory mechanic is neat enough to be unique, which has resulted in a decent number of sales for this game.
Guys, we gotta go!
Now this next title I was not expecting since, get this, Eternights is an action dating sim which sounds super weird, mixing the dating and getting to know these characters with Japanese action RPG style combat, and somehow it works. It is set in an apocalypse in a world on the cusp of ending, with it having Persona 5 style time management elements in which you need to decide what to do with your day. The action is surprisingly good, with some impressive animated cutscenes as well, and despite the overall polish, does come to us from a relatively small team and is worth a mention. This video is brought to you by Galactic Glitch Infinity's Edge, an arena action roguelike title but with physics, having fast-paced action and satisfying combat. In classic space shooters, think asteroids for example, projectiles move in a straight line and then go off the screen if they miss, but in this case, the play area is bounded by an elastic bubble, and you do have access to a gravity gun-like weapon and are able to do things like grab massive rocks, chuck them into the bubble, and then watch them slingshot back to destroy your enemies. You can also rip out enemy cores or to grab their missiles and throw it back, not to mention a variety of deadly weapons of your own. They are a long-time supporter of this channel, so please do me a favor and wishlist their game on Steam. The Yakuza live sim beat-em-up title Fading Afternoon has been in development for a long time, so I'm glad to see its success, being the next title from developer Yo, who made the great The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa. You play as a middle-aged Yakuza who just got out of prison, being drawn back into the life, so to speak, but also has the opposing force of our protagonist getting old and wanting to do something different. It juxtaposes moments of loneliness, solitude and reflection, such as having to drive out to a serene lake to fish, with the violence and brutality of fighting other gangsters and assassinating their leaders, so it's a very unique title that is worth a play and only possible in indie games. A later entry for the month is the wonderful Paleo Pines, a dinosaur
Cozy farm sim
in which you run your own ranch on an island, enlisting the help of your dino pals to tend to the farm. You are attempting to create a dino sanctuary, and along the way are exploring the island on dinosaur back to uncover its secrets as well. You know the drill by now in terms of the basic farming sim gameplay loop, and where this has been described as Jurassic Park meets Stardew Valley with more of an emphasis on the cozy parts of that pairing, so it's a no-brainer for fans of the genre. I asked yesterday in the community tab on what 2023 in indie games is the year of, and in my opinion, it might just be the year of the puzzle game, since we have had quite a number of excellent ones such as Chants of Sennaar. This is an investigative and decoding kind of puzzle game set in the Tower of Babel, which currently houses various groups, all having their own languages, and where legend has it that a traveller will one day pass through and reunite the people. This is done through observation, in which you are trying to figure out what the various symbols mean, eventually translating and decoding it to solve puzzles and to get the people to communicate, with a beautiful art style, and is just well done with a little bit of Obra Dinn vibes. Surprise! Best Bigger Games of the Month begins with Dune Spice Wars, a 4X RTS title set in the iconic sci-fi universe, coming to us from the developer of Northgard, so it's no wonder that it's good, being similar in terms of core mechanics, and where the different factions are actually different to play as, although the main complaint has been that it was pushed out the door of a 1.0 release and still has not completed the story campaign. Folks, I'm a little bit sad since this might be the last official appearance of
Farm Simulation RPG
on the channel, since Fae Farm is out and is pretty good, where the whole thing stemmed from a Nintendo Direct, which had like 6 or 7 farming sims announced, and while this fairy tale entry doesn't reinvent the wheel, it's a decent entry and interestingly comes to us from the developer of the Monster Hunter-like Dauntless, so they sure are flexing their creativity with this. Korean Pinocchio Bloodborne Lies of P has been getting a lot of attention ever since it was revealed, and the reception has been good so far, being one of the better non-FromSoft Souls games, having little bits of both Bloodborne and Sekiro in this, so if you're a fan of the genre, do yourself a favour and give this a go. It might be weird to say this, but the top-down action-adventure looter-shooter Relic Hunter's Legend seems to be pretty fun and has about 1.5k players online a week after launch, so it might end up being okay, where according to LinkedIn, this developer has like 50 people but it's a remote-first studio, which is why I chucked them in here. The Steam port and release of Rune Factory 3 Special is another farming sim title worth a mention, porting over a game from the DS to modern platforms, where the series has always been described to me as anime Harvest Moon with combat, and it fits the bill, with this version adding Newlywed Mode, which adds standalone adventures for each of the 11 eligible bachelorettes. Another port that has been doing very well is WitchSpring R, a remake of a mobile-first title, but stripping out all the mobile game BS, and hey, what do you know, there's actually a good game underneath all that. The mobile game market is a complete mess in my opinion, with the over-reliance on gacha games and exploiting whales to sustain developers, and while the mobile version of this game isn't that, it at least shows that it's possible to do things another way. Okay, back to indie games with Heretic's Fork, a roguelite defense title with deck building elements that I especially want to highlight, since this of course has Vampire Survivors inspiration, but added enough new things to make it their own as compared to the absolute tsunami of bad Survivors style games on Steam. You are the manager of hell, having to build towers to keep the endless hordes of the underworld in check, with different characters and strategies to try, with that familiar dopamine releasing gameplay and visual feedback. One thing about indie games is how those who iterate win, with a key example being Astrea 6-Sided Oracles, a roguelite dice builder title with an interesting purification and corruption system, which stands out not only because of the art, but because everyone else just copied Slay the Spire. Sure, the core elements are the same, but giving players something new to wrap their heads around is always exciting and is one for fans of the genre. Similarly, you know the drill by now with Moonstone Island, another
cozy farm sim,
but adding in monster taming elements and combat, which is just genius. In theory, this is my dream game since I love Stardew Valley and Pokemon, so combining the two is very smart, and they have pretty much executed to perfection with this game. The flying islands setting is neat, and flying around on your glider is so freeing, and although the deck building style combat may not be for everyone, it is not a hardcore deck builder, so you should generally be fine. My goodness, the reception to this game has been something else, huh? Cocoon is the latest game from the lead gameplay designer of Limbo and Inside, which, as a side note, I don't know what Playdate is like these days since this guy has left and another of the main guys started a studio that made Somerville, but anyway, this puzzle game has been getting critical praise. Its core ideas center around recursion, in which you can carry orbs which are worlds in themselves and being able to jump into and out of orbs Inception style, and has been touted as a Game of the Year contender. I do think it's pretty neat to see a Chinese wuxia-based title getting as popular as this game is, and with a Western audience as well, since Wandering Sword is a pixel art RPG title with both real-time and turn-based tactics combat options, which isn't the most common thing that you might see. For years, the fantasy Chinese martial arts space has been dominated by games from the Fairy and Sword as well as the Xuanyuan Sword series, games which have largely been confined to a Chinese-speaking audience, and yet Wandering Sword exists and managed to break through despite the odds. While the story is a classic wuxia tale, which is basically a hero's journey type story, the Octopath Traveler-like visuals, theme and RPG elements stand out, where you can find more of the best looking pixel art games in this video.